Well, Senator Joe Manchin's no on BBB means President Biden will not be able to pass his multi-trillion-dollar spending bill through the Senate anytime soon. But his far-left allies in Congress have a new plan. Writing in the Washington Post, House Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal is calling on the president to use executive action to immediately enact parts of the BBB without the approval of Congress, and says the far-left Progressive Caucus will soon issue instructions, point by point, on how to do it. Joining us now to weigh in is former Treasury Undersecretary Monica Crowley and former White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley. Good to see you both. So, Monica, the left claims, by the way, that this is nothing unusual, that Donald Trump did the same thing by reapportioning defense spending to help build the wall. But that is small potatoes compared to the BBB. I mean, we're talking multi-trillion-dollar plan. What Trump did was a few $billion for a section of wall. How do you think it's going to work out in the end?
Well, you know, the Progressive Caucus is really upset with Senator Manchin and others for not being able to push this transformative bill through. And you're exactly right, David. You're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar centerpiece of the Biden presidency. So the Progressive Caucus is now wielding its influence over this president, who is clearly at their mercy, to try to come up with creative ways for the president to use executive power. And already what we're hearing is that they have their sights on Medicare expansion, on immigration, on student debt, huge chunks of BBB that they weren't able to get through the one single bill. They're going to try to break apart and see if they can get it through these kinds of creative ways through executive action. The question is, how are they going to pay for it? Because we are talking about budgetary items, right. And if they're going through executive action, this is going to cost money. It's going to fall to the taxpayer. How are they going to pay for it?
Well, Hogan, clearly there's not enough money just floating around to reapportion it from this bill or that bill, et cetera. Won't Republicans challenge this immediately? Won't it go to the Supreme Court?
I sure hope they challenge it. I mean, what's interesting about this, though, and Monica outlined exactly the process and why it's bad for the country, but people don't like this bill. It's wildly unpopular. Joe Biden's poll numbers can't really take another hit. I mean, they don't like him as a person. They don't like his policies. And so his only answer is more cowbell. I'm going to double down and spend hundreds of billions of dollars, giving it to journalists and more people at the IRS to check up on American citizens, hundreds of millions of dollars to illegal aliens. No one wants this bill to pass. It's a monstrosity. It's a problem for the future of the country. And if Democrats have any hope of trying to salvage their chances for 2022 and stop the hemorrhaging, this is not the solution. This is only going to alienate them more and expose their radicalism and what they want to do to the future of this country.
Well, Monica, Americans realize they're not dumb as President Biden suggested a couple of weeks ago when he said, well, Americans may not understand. They understand that spending money you don't have causes inflation. That's what happens. That's where inflation comes from. They understand that. And to spend $500 billion of this bill, $555 billion on climate change issues, realizing that that's causing gas prices to go up and natural gas prices to go up, just as winter's hitting us hard. They don't want more of that.
Well, that's exactly right, David. It's pretty insulting for the Biden administration to say, well, the American people just don't understand what's in the bill or how it's going to benefit them. The American people are rejecting this because they do understand what's in this bill and how much it's going to cost, and the idea that we simply cannot afford it. We have pumped trillions of dollars down into the system over the last 2 years because of the pandemic, but we're no longer in the emergency. So the need is no longer there. The economy is open, and pushing down trillions of dollars more that we don't have is going to make today's inflation look like child's play. That's why in the state of West Virginia, 74% of Manchin's constituents reject BBB. And you see that number as well opposing this nationwide. So if they go down this road, which I think that they will, because they're all about power and control and the fundamental transformation of the nation, but if they go down this road, there are going to be not just economic, but political consequences.
Well, yeah, and legal consequences. I mean, again, Hogan, you talk about rule changes. They're changing. I know it's not as constitutionally fundamental as what we just talked about, because spending is supposed to originate in Congress and in laws that are created by the two houses of Congress. But the changes in the filibuster rule. They're trying to do that in order to get the Voting Rights Act through. Now, Manchin once again comes into play because he was against the first attempt to do that. Will he hold the line with regard to changing the filibuster rule?
I really hope so. I mean, this would be a disaster for this country. Democrats used the filibuster hundreds of times. I mean, they stopped Tim Scott's police reform bill. They stopped all types of bills as related to immigration and the border wall, as you talked about. This is a tried and true tested tactic that a lot of people use in Congress. You cannot fundamentally change the country by eliminating the filibuster. It's exactly what the Democrats want to do. And speaking of the bill itself, I mean, how insane is it to believe that the nation should have one uniform way of conducting its elections? The Constitution is clear.
Yeah.
It gives the right and responsibility to the states to do that. And to think that the federal government can come in and run the polling place in your local precinct, this is the same government that loses hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID funding, that loses hundreds of billions of dollars in Medicare fraud, that botched Afghanistan, that botched the southern border. They're now trying to tell you they know best how to run elections in this country. It's absolutely insane.
By the way, Manchin may have company on this one because Sinema has suggested she's not going to allow the filibuster to die either. Monica, I want to switch to another subject. Democrats are just going hog wild over this "Let's go Brandon" comment made by one of the callers to the president's call-in line. I just want to remind viewers what happened. I don't think by now, I don't think I have to explain what "Let's go Brandon" really means, but let me just play the tape and get your reaction. Go ahead.
I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas as well. Merry Christmas, and let's go Brandon.
Let's go Brandon. I agree.
And I mean, it's kind of sad, isn't it? It's kind of pathetic. But CNN is actually going out even further. They're calling what this guy did an insurrection, using the most overused word in 2021. What do you make of all this?
Well, if everything is an insurrection, then nothing is an insurrection. Look, the fact that the left is melting down over this very mild, innocuous joke to the president from an American citizen, and he's certainly covered in the First Amendment and can certainly tell the president off if he wants to. The fact that they're melting down over this tells you not only how sensitive they are, but the idea that they could not have lasted 5 minutes, given the kinds of attacks and criticism that came at President Trump and to Hogan and me and everybody else who served under President Trump. They could not survive 5 minutes,
and Hogan,
given what we had to contend with. And you know what? They've got the protection of the press, and that's why they're not used to it.
Hogan, the bottom line here is that it doesn't matter because the public sees right through it. It kind of reminds me, going back to the Reagan years, of what happened when the media said if Reagan's elected, we're going to be at war with the Soviet Union in a week, where the economy is going to be in worse shape than it was under Jimmy Carter, et cetera. The public said, we don't care. We're going to go with our gut feeling. I think they're doing the same now with the opposite reaction towards Joe Biden, don't you?
But spare me the pearl clutching from the mainstream media and vulgar language. Stroll through any newsroom in Washington, D.C. and let the expletives fly. You'll hear them all over the place. Not to mention the fact Democrats said horrible ththings about Donald Trump. I mean, saying they would impeach the mother effer. They used F. Trump did one, a Hollywood actor at one of those award shows and got praised for it. Politico wrote an article that said why Democrats are using vulgar language more and more. So they've been doing this now for a long time, especially aimed at the Trump administration, not just the president, the first lady, other members of that administration. It was top to bottom. Democrats don't like this because it was organic and because it's smart. And you can let your feelings be well known about Joe Biden without saying one bad word, and the Democrats don't like that at all.
It's thin skin. It's that simple. You're great, guys. Thank you very much. Monica, Hogan, great to see you both. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year.